Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, and it's a sweltering hot and humid Ontario right at this stage. We're waiting for some rain up where I am in Woodstock. And we're here with episode number 135 of The Yakking Show. And this is the show to awaken you to new perspectives for the changing world we find ourselves in. And it's changing every day at the moment. And today's guest is really going to help you get used to these new perspectives, but it's not my job to introduce him. Kathleen does it so much better than I do. Before I welcome her, just to mention she wears another hat, and that is Tech Solutions, where she can help you with your IT recruiting and development needs, but she knows more about that than me. So welcome, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thanks for that intro. And thank you all so very much for tuning in to our show. We so appreciate you and we love reading your comments. So please keep those coming. And if anyone out there is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. His name is Norm Tam. Norm, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here. And it's also sweltering heat in Montreal. Just to let you know.
Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank heavens for air conditioning is all I can say today. But Norm, you are the founder of Ikigai Coaching. So for our audience, can you give us a little bit about your background and how you were drawn to the world of coaching? And first of all, perhaps tell us exactly what Ikigai means.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. There's a little bit of an origin story because the Ikigai was actually what inspired me to start my coaching practice. So for all of those who do not know, Ikigai is a Japanese term for reason of being. Very, very simply put, yeah. So it's purpose or reason for being. It's a rather simplistic notion, and it's in its Japanese roots. It's very straightforward. It's something that gets you motivated to start the day, a reason to wake up for. And then obviously from a Western perspective, we like to just complicate everything and, and take simple practices and really put frameworks to it and tools to it. So if you actually Googled Ikigai, you would get the phone book these days. It's a very popular self-development tool, and you'll probably end up seeing the four concentric circles, the Venn diagram that represents Ikigai, which I can get into in a bit. But all that to say that I actually perform my own Ikigai. I went through the exercise myself when I was working on my own personal development, and it inspired me so much that I realized that I had to follow my Ikigai, which was when I had walked through it. It was to start a coaching business, and I was left with one decision. Do I just kind of accept it on paper, or do I turn it into reality? And I chose the latter.
Very good, very good. I think you've answered what I was going to ask you, but you can expand on it with pleasure. And that my question was going to be, why did you choose Ikigai instead of some of the more common North American coaching philosophies?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the origin story behind it actually inspired me to start my business. So I figured, there's no better name for my coaching practice, Ikigai. It's so centered around purpose, and I think that's a big topic these days. A lot of people I speak to, it seems like the pandemic had a wonderful effect of awakening people to that little deeper sense of purpose. And I hear more and more of that as people that, I hear are switching jobs more often, as, a lot of my clients that I speak to are going through a lot of change themselves. And I think, purpose has always been that topic, for thousands and thousands of years as human beings, that resonates. And I'm sure, thousands and thousands from years from now will continue to resonate with people as the search within becomes a little deeper. So, I mean, long-winded answer to your very direct question, Peter. Why did I choose that? I actually believe as a tool, it's highly effective in assisting people to get one layer deeper in terms of what are they actually trying to accomplish.
Okay. I'm going to jump in, if I may, Kathleen, with a follow-up to that one for Norm. my accent's different. You probably picked that up. I spent most of my life in Africa, and I would argue that people who live a very simple life close to nature, and not just in Africa, all over the world, don't have this huge problem with what is my purpose that many of us more sophisticated people in the first world do, because their purpose is to survive and to stay alive, and to do that in harmony with nature as much as possible. And some of the most contented people I've come across in my whole life have been people who we would say are absolutely poor, but in their lifestyle and in their contentment, they're richer than anything. So am I on the right track there, or?
Yeah, I think, well, personally speaking, I think you're absolutely on the right track. I think it has everything to do with Maslow's pyramid of self-fulfillment. And you're absolutely right, Peter. If you're hungry and you don't have shelter and you're just struggling to get by to live, the existential questions of what is my deeper purpose on this planet probably not going to be going through your mind as you're looking for your next meal.
Right.
So I actually believe it's absolutely a kind of developed world issue. When life is comfortable, when you have clothes on your back, when you're driving around a decent car, when you have food at your disposal every single minute of the day, the mind tends to wander. To wander. Okay, well, now that I have all this,
what's next?
What next? Yeah, exactly. Or
now
that I have all this, why am I still unhappy? Which is really, I think, a bit more of the common theme that comes up is I have all these beautiful things. I have a family that that I love. But why does it feel like there's still something missing?
Yep.
And you hit it on the head. As someone that that lives a simpler life, and that's what I was alluding to when I mentioned the Japanese concept of Ikigai. It's so simple. It's like a reason for getting up in the morning.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Kathleen, over to you.
Well, I mean, just to echo what you just said, Peter, and I know this show isn't about me, it's about you, Norm, but it actually ties in. I was in Peru a few years ago and right into, the jungle. And I remember watching these women who had, in terms of money, in terms of possessions, absolutely nothing. But here they were scrubbing their clothes in the Amazon River. And I was observing them, and they were absolutely, from my perspective anyways, joyous. They were laughing, they were dancing, they were carrying on with their children, but they had nothing. And in fact, we did see where they lived, and literally cardboard boxes is what they used for shelter.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
I would actually argue, Kathleen, and that's a beautiful story. And I would actually argue that they did have something. They probably had something that most people don't have, which was an appreciation of just the pure present moment.
Yes.
In its simplicity.
Yes,
right?
You're absolutely right. I should not.
We are here. We're alive. We're in a community right now. The weather is nice. We're healthy. So life is good.
Right. They are in the moment. Right.
Yeah.
And I'd like to take a deeper dive, if we can, Norm, with the diagram that is on your website right now. So I'm going to screen share. And for those of you who are just hearing this as a podcast, I'll ask Norm to kind of describe what we're seeing, and that you can kind of walk us through this. So here we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
I can see that. Yeah. So like I said, I mean, if you Googled the term Ikigai, you can more or less find a lot of things that look like this. Ikigai really is, and again, I will have to specify the more Western approach. Right. This is a tool. So this is not to say that you have to use this tool to find a reason for being. Not at all. Everyone has their own ways. This particular tool really focuses on 4 elements: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And the concept is, in the intersection of all those pillars or elements, you do find that reason for being, that personal Ikigai, right? So You know, what you love, and I won't, like I said, very present on Google. You know, a lot of research out there. What you love is the intuitive component, is the component that, you know, the emotional aspect. Don't think too hard about it. If you're trying to find your own personal Ikigai, just go with instinct. What would you do if you weren't going to get paid for all day long? What do you love doing? What you're good at, a great way of, finding that out is asking others, actually. Asking others, what do you think I'm good at? Or noticing what people come to you for a lot. You know, if a lot of people are showing up at your doorstep saying, hey, you know what, you got a great ear for music. Hey, you know what, when it comes to cooking, like no one does it better than you. Those are cues to pick up from friends and family. What the world needs, now we shift into the external components. So the first two are really internal to yourself. What the world needs, again, is just a bit of a fact check on, okay, you may find something that you love and that you're good at, but if the world really doesn't need it, it's going to be very difficult to find fulfillment and purpose there because, again, it's just not sustainable. And that goes very similarly to that last pillar, what you can be paid for. Again, the notion of sustainability. If, you know, the world needs it, you love doing it and you're great at it, but you really can't find any way of being, you know, remunerated for it or compensated for it, going to be extremely difficult to sustain, you know, that practice or vocation that you come up with.
Very good. And for those of our audience who are listening to this audio only, the link to Norm's website where you can find this diagram is in the description. So if you want to find out more, go there and contact Norm, and we'll be talking about it a bit more later.
Right.
Good. So I've got one for you, Norm. You know, I'm old, much older than you guys, and I know that years ago, coaching for top-level sportsmen was popular, right? And I'm thinking in my memory, the first major televised professional sport other than soccer in Europe was golf, right? And all these big golf players like Nicklaus and Gary Player, and I'm really dating myself now, but they all had coaches. So it was common for professional sports people. But it's only comparatively recently, I believe, that people have gone to coaches for lifestyle, for success in business, and also. What brought that about, do you believe?
I actually think it's just it comes about from the recognition more and more so that, you know, the human aspect in business is important. Okay. And, you know, by recognizing that, you know, the success of a business really comes down to the success of its people. I think that's why we're seeing coaching more and more accepted, more and more really accepted in the business world, because we realize that, you know what, if I actually do want my business to thrive or to develop more than it has been doing, perhaps I actually need to look at the human issues that are going on within my business and potentially unblock those, right? So that, you know, by doing so, that my business can actually get to the next level. And I'll give a perfect example. You know, in a regular sport coaching framework, if, you know, we try to get an athlete to run faster, but the athlete just has a bad knee, right? There's going to be not much success there. Because, you know, we can try all we want. You know, at that point, the coach probably just has to say, listen, we're just going to rest at this point, and, you know, we'll come up with a schedule 3 or 4 weeks from now to kick the training back off to get to the next step. You know, in a business, it's really not that different. You know, if we're trying to improve the leadership or the management capabilities of the business, but we realize that there just happens to be a very bad culture at play within the organization that doesn't seem to appreciate, to want to better its people, well, that's the bad knee. You know, there's no point going down that path right now, and until we correct, you know, the knee issue, or in this case, where does that culture come from, so that we can you know, address that, and then after that focus on more of the tactical and the habits of better leadership or better management practices.
Great. No, very, very good analogy. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Good.
Yeah.
So Norm, although you've done coaching throughout your professional career in some form or another,
Yeah.
you've decided to actually start a dedicated coaching practice in 2020 at the height of your professional career. But what was the catalyst that made you make the change at a period in time that is, the world is in turmoil?
Yeah. You're bringing a lot of memories to that point in time now. In short, it was you go back to the Ikigai. In short, that's what inspired me. I actually had the deathbed question posed to myself of, if I don't pursue this passion of mine, and where I do feel this deep sense of purpose with wanting to help others, if I don't pursue that now as not only my career, but as my own business, will I regret this? It was that deathbed question. Am I going to regret this on my deathbed? And the answer just stared me down in my face pretty quickly. It was a resounding yes, you will regret this. So what are you waiting for? Was kind of the the answer that came about. Not to say that it wasn't scary at the moment.
I'm sure.
As you mentioned before, I was at a good momentum in my career, and could have probably just continued at it, and had the financial stability and the kind of professional fulfillment that can come from furthering your career. But I really decided that I was 43 years old at the time, still old enough to have the experience to get me through starting a new venture, but young enough to still make some stupid mistakes.
You're never too old for that, believe me.
Yeah. So I just figured it's the perfect time. It's the perfect time, and what honestly, one of the practices that I love doing with my clients when coaching sometimes is asking, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
At this point, like it seems very scary, and there's a lot of that ego at play of I'm going to be giving this up, and I work so hard for it. But at the end of the day, really, what's the worst that's going to happen? And when I realized, not much, because I can always decide to further my career once again through the traditional path.
Right.
I said, well, it's time to jump.
Oh, good for you. My goodness. I have
well
so
done.
much respect for people that are able to do that, because I think it does take a lot of courage. Don't you think so, Norm? I
think it just takes, I was talking about this with my son the other day, because we came about on the topic of skydiving. I don't really remember how it came up. We were driving, and he just kind of asked like, "Dad, did you ever skydive before?" And I said, "I actually did skydive." And I told him, I said, you know what? As exhilarating as the actual event was, obviously, with the tandem jumping out of a plane, with someone, a stranger on your back that you're just hoping is going to do the right thing. I told him that it's really what came afterwards that I'm the most appreciative of. And it's the ability to sometimes, in the day-to-day events that you're going through, that split second where you're jumping out of the plane and you're saying, screw it, I'm doing this. That's what I appreciate about it, because that I actually take to my day-to-day quite a bit. Yep. And, being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of the screw it, I'm doing it.
For sure.
That has to creep in. To help you out. And I told my son, I said, that's the part that I really appreciate taking from that experience, because I think like you're saying, it does take a little bit of courage, calculated risks, all that stuff, but I think it really comes down to are you going to jump or not? Most of the time.
Yeah. And what I found is the the other side of that coin, the perception that not taking the chance offers security, stability, long-term gain is somewhat false, because everything, no matter how good you think and safe you think your job in the regular world is, corporate takeovers, whatever, just in a heartbeat, the whole thing can be thrown upside down. And other, as I've found, other factors as well. So you've got a bit of balance, but I know exactly what you're talking about, that exhilaration of jumping out of that plane. Not that I've jumped out of planes, done a few other scary things, but I know what you're talking about. So what I wanted to ask you was who's your typical coaching client? And there's a two-part to this question. Have you found an increased interest in coaching? I think you mentioned this before, since the virus 18 months ago started.
Well, I mean, the second part of the question, Peter, quite honestly, I can't answer from experience, because, I started my coaching practice, during the pandemic.
Right at the beginning,
But what I like I said, personally, I can't really say that. But what I will say is, from what I hear a lot, coaching is like just a growing industry. I mean, you can tell there's a lot of coaches out there. I'm sure you see all of us on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Like, there's a growing community, and I think there's an openness that it supports, and it's that open minded perspective of, you know what, I've come so far by myself. Maybe I just need an external perspective.
Right.
And that's really why I believe the industry is thriving and will continue to grow. To get to the first part of your question, Peter, what was it again?
Who's your typical coaching client?
There's actually a mix at this point, to be honest with you. There's obviously just the business coaching, which I would say mixed with consulting as well, because the 15 plus years I have from the corporate world, when it comes to business processes, implementing frameworks, implementing the right KPIs in your business, and being able to measure performance. I couldn't get away from that even if I wanted to at this point. And even when I started my coaching practice and really wanted to focus more on personal development, I had contacts just reaching out saying that's great and all, Norm, but like, we got a problem in our company. You think you can go out and look and help us kind of fix it? So quite honestly, between a mix of that and individuals who personally just want to improve themselves, whether it be through executive coaching and kind of the management and leadership stream, or really just the life coaching, the personal, true personal development. I have clients in all three pools right now. And enjoying it quite a bit. At first when I started, I think I went through what many coaches try to do is, I got to focus on one thing. I got to focus on one niche, which was exactly what I was trying to do. But then I realized at one point, why am I fighting this? I have these clients coming to me from different avenues with different skill sets. And if anything, I find, being able to mix all of those different realms sometimes really is what kind of sets me apart.
Sure.
So being able to work with a CEO or a CEO of a business, but get into the personal mindset of the issue, which quite honestly, 90% of the time is where the issues are anyways. It comes down to personal mindset. Being able to work that out first and open that up, that playground, so that it's extremely receptive, and we're seeing together what the potential is there if this mindset will shift, right? That's step one. After that, all of the tactics and business practices and leadership and management practices come in, like they just flow afterwards.
Right.
But it's always mindset first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yes. Very good.
So Norm, you've just touched on this, but I'd like to get a little bit more detail into, perhaps you can walk us through the process you go through when you begin to work with somebody. What can they expect from you? How do you start the process off when somebody says, I need some help here?
Well, that's usually the first step. Usually the first step is some recognition, some self-realization that okay, I'm at a place and this applies in business or, just, for personal development as well. I've gotten to a point right now where I kind of feel a little bit stuck, overwhelmed. I seem to be repeating the same thing over and over again and not getting, a certain result that I want.
Mm-hmm.
I need to just get some different perspective on. So I'd say almost 100% of my clients, no matter from what stream they're coming in from, share that same viewpoint, that initial viewpoint, that there's something that's going on and I need to speak to someone. So in the initial consultation call that I'll have, we'll get into all that. We'll get into, okay, what is the issue? What is the problem? And what's very interesting is usually what the perceived problem is, right? The one that comes out of the individual's mouth within the first 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
is very rarely what the actual problem is.
Yeah.
And, and we get to that within an hour in the first consultation call, like we'll start playing around with that. And that's where I'll start to see the nods and the, oh yeah, okay. I understand now. I see why maybe I haven't been able to turn this around. And then we're defining a baseline interest of, okay, what is this coaching engagement going to be about? So that's the next step, is really, really getting focused on what specifically are we going to be working for. And quite honestly, what I don't start any engagement before defining, well, what are going to be the goals and objectives that we're going after?
Good.
Or else it's just too vague.
Mm-hmm.
It's too gray, and I'm literally setting up my client probably for not being successful if we're not clear on what the engagement is all about. And then after that, I mean, really, it's I call the coaching experience a complete back and forth trust. It's like, we're batting the ball back and forth, very much like a tennis match. I'll ask a question, I'll try and gain some perspective, ball over the other side of the net, and whoever I'm coaching is knocking that ball back, saying, well, this is how I'm feeling about this, or this is why it hasn't worked out yet. And we just keep going back and forth with a line of self-questioning, really.
Right.
And at a certain point, and it's 100%. At a certain point, it does happen where there's the aha moment.
Mm.
And that's the moment, quite honestly, that I live for. Like that's the moment when I see the look on the other side of the screen or in person, when the person is kind of nodding and saying, oh, okay, yeah, I see that now.
I got it. Right.
Yeah. And that's what, and I do want to make the distinction, that's really the difference between consulting and coaching.
Okay.
Right. Consulting is when kind of people just kind of pay an expert because they have the experience to come and more or less guide them and just show them, this is kind of what you're going to have to do. Coaching, on the other hand, is, I'd say, a lot more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Because the coach's job is to actually have the person that you're coaching see the solution.
Right.
On their own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's where the difference lies. And that's where the difference in ownership actually is completely different. Because I like to joke about it. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Inception. It's a couple of years back, but it's a movie about the idea of implanting thoughts in someone's mind and having them think more or less that it's their thought.
Okay.
But it's actually the most powerful way to actually have someone, own something. We know this. We're human beings in general. When we think of it, it sticks.
Yep.
Right. If someone else says, no, you can't do this. You need to do this, and I'm telling you to do that. Most of the time, we're like, yeah, whatever. I know myself. I know what I'm capable of doing, and that's for someone else. That's not for me.
Right.
So really, coaching is all about getting that moment when there's a realization from the individual themselves of what they need to do, and it sounds so simple. you know? And in those moments when it does click, it actually is pretty simple because that's the foundational piece. Because when that happens, everything that occurs afterwards is just about setting up the habits, setting up the tactical a little bit more for success afterwards. But that major block is like, you know, has been removed. But getting there sometimes is not exactly the simplest thing.
That's right.
Because, yeah.
It's also incredibly good if you get it right for bringing up children too.
Yeah.
If you can get them to think it's their idea, I tell you, it saves so many headaches.
Well, you know what? It's you know, it's so funny you say that, Peter, because I mean, obviously, I have 2 kids, and I catch myself sometimes. You know, the go-to parent instinct is no. I'm telling you, as your father, don't do that. This is what you need to do because I've been around longer, and you need to listen to me. That's the instinct that I fight all the time.
I know.
Right? But when you realize that, you know, then I get into coach mode. I put on my coaching hat and start asking some questions of, well, listen, why do you think that's the best way you're going to do that right now? Right? And then you see the mind start to go.
Yep.
And, you know, is there a better way maybe that you can do that so that everyone is happy? You know, like, you know, I'll ask that question. And then they'll say, well, you know, maybe I need to share this more with everyone, or maybe, you know, I'm going to help out before dinner. And it's like, okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. It's easy, but it's hard to get it right.
It's hard to remain consistent. I think that's, as parents, that's you know, when you know, you're tired, when you get home at night, when you've had a long day and you're forced with it, you're faced with a situation where you're like, okay, I can just play the authoritative right now and do it because I'm a parent, or actually go through a bit of a more elaborate process. We're all human. We're all going to gravitate sometimes. Listen, this is easier. I'm just going to get it done.
It's hard to get it right. We're running short of time, Norman. I got a question I got to ask you. I ask all our successful people this question. So based on your sort of years experience in the corporate world and coaching and talking to and meeting with such a wide range of people, what would you say is the most important characteristic or mindset or habit, if you like, that differentiates the successful, and I'm not talking just in terms of accumulating wealth, successful and content people from the majority who seem to be stressed and generally unhappy? Is there a key? What's the key?
Accountability.
Accountability.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've noticed that, you know, with every single client I work with, the ones that are, like you said, a little bit more content and, you know, a little bit more open-minded, they're accountable. They know that it's up to them.
Right.
The ones that will keep a story going of, it's not my fault, it's so-and-so's fault, or, you know, this person has made it impossible for me. Unfortunately, those are the individuals that it's going to be a little tougher. It's going to be a little harder to get to those breakthrough moments because there's a lot of displacing going on.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I agree 100% with you. And I got to relay back to you. We asked this question of a lot of people, and there's probably only 6 factors that come up time and time again. This is one of them, and there's a few others, but it's not as if there's 12 or 20 different things. There's very few that come up. So thank you for that. Kathleen, over to you.
I think we're running low on time, Peter. So Norm, how do people get a hold of you? How do they contact you?
Very easily by phone, 514-968-7648. Or I have the same social media handle across Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. It's Norm Tam Coaching. So on any one of those platforms, you can find me that way.
That was Facebook, Instagram, and
LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn.
Yeah, all Norm Tam Coaching.
Okay, and of course your website.
Yeah, www.ikigaiprocoaching.com.
And a reminder to audio listeners, that diagram we were talking about, Norm was explaining, is on that website. Thanks, Norm.
Yes.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was great having you on the show, Norm. Thank you.
Chat.
And thank you all so very much for tuning in. And again, we love reading your comments, so keep them coming. And until next time, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.